Good morning. Hello. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined as always by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over the last few weeks at Manchester United, such as it is, and also the little tournament called the World Cup. Paul, it's been a while before we get into that. How have you been doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, Wayne. Not too bad. Made a little venture across to football. I watched half a dozen live games and went to a few events as well while I was there.
Okay. What games did you go and see?
Oh, I don't even go there on that one. I think I got memory loss on those ones. I saw half a dozen games in 3 days. We was doing 2 games a day, and
Wow.
I know I ain't digging road to a living, but it was tough in that sense of getting up and then getting to the game, and then as soon as the game finished, the first game of the day, I should say, then we jumped in a minibus and then shot straight away to get to the second game with 20, 30 minutes to spare. And the game's not finishing until midnight, and then it was like start again. And by the time it come to the point of jumping back on the plane to Dubai and then to leave the following day, I was so pleased to jump on a plane home because it'd been the whole trip was about 9, 10 days.
Yeah.
So I had a few events, World Cup related in Dubai as well, which with that extra hour on at Dubai as well made a difference. The games weren't finished until 1 in the morning. So it was a little bit of a tough one. So much football in such a short space of time, but something that's never really going to be done again because there's not going to be another country of that size that's going to have a World Cup. Well, I don't think so anyway at this moment in time. But
Yeah.
to be able to just to initially, well, when I was in Qatar, to go from one to the other and just being, in Dubai as well, and then you relax and then you go again for another game. It was. I thought it was a really good football tournament. And that's what it was about. It was about football.
Yeah. Couple of comments in. Yes, Paul. You could elaborate on that, but yes, Paul. I presume that means a good thing. Tyler says, "Good morning, lads. Good morning, Tyler. Hope you're well, mate." Yeah, I had heard that from a couple of people who went to a couple of games there. Um, Oh yeah, sub to Talk of the Devils because the content is great. Yes, we like that kind of comment first thing, especially when we've been away for a couple of weeks. Paul, I have heard that from a couple of people. They went out there, and by the end of the second game, it was really strange. You know what I mean? It was a bit tiring, getting to that end of that second game. But people did indulge in it while they could because of the uniqueness of it. There was a lot of controversy before the tournament about the decision to host it out there and everything like that. What did you make of that? I mean, you did allude to it there. You thought it was a unique thing. It was the tournament itself was held well. Your experience of it being there, you've obviously played in international tournaments. You've been to international tournaments. What did you make of the organisation of it all?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have played in one, and I think I was just as fortunate, maybe even more, to have been able to go to Brazil as well
Yeah,
and watch the World Cup in Brazil. And for me, that was a fantastic. The only thing that could better that was to have ever played a World Cup in Brazil, but then to go to this one, which I wasn't 100%. The people who invited me out kept, they were persistent. So I'm glad they were because I ended up going and I was more. I think I was like to have been able to have gone there earlier and then gone to some earlier games, which I missed out on because I didn't get there until after the England Wales game. I arrived just before the England Wales game. But I'm football. I don't get involved in anything else really. I stay away from it because it's not my strength, I would say. But we should be talking about a football tournament, and everyone is talking about a football tournament. There's been a few people trying to talk about other things, but people aren't interested. People just want to talk about what a good tournament it was, how good the football was as well. Over it, there wasn't many bad games. I think the worst game of the tournament, in my opinion, was the first game.
yeah,
That was totally no. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was poor. The poorest opening game I've ever seen. To be perfectly honest, it was terrible. But when you look at who the hosts were, you weren't expecting much else really.
yeah,
But when you get people trying to throw things up to take things away from what we should have been talking about and watching, then you realise and you think about it, we're going to have to put up with this for the rest of our lives because of there's so much to talk about because we want to keep digging up history all the time and if we're going to live in that kind of world now, then we might as well not do anything anymore and just sit down and just turn into fossils, to be perfectly honest.
Those are the platforms are the ones that I mean, I know the people that you're speaking about, and they're using their platforms to talk about what happened, and rightly so. I'm not disagreeing with that, but we are here to talk about the football. Leave the politics to the other platforms, and the people better educated at doing so and with better profiles to do so. Affects change. Billy says, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing, mate? He says, is it too early to say it was the best World Cup tournament ever? Certainly the best final ever, in my opinion. I wouldn't say that it was the best tournament overall. I didn't think the quality was there, but the final, even the final, really, for a good hour, I thought, Argentina. I don't know. I mean, it was a strange one for me. Obviously, the last sort of 50 minutes, including extra time, it was a bonanza. It was incredible. And don't get me wrong, when Argentina were moving forward, they were incredible to watch sometimes. But I did find their game management uncomfortable to watch. And you're going to get that from an Argentina side, I know. But as soon as they went to goal up, they were breaking the game up. Like you've seen it before with Argentina sides, and you know that it's part of their composition, part of historically who they are. So you don't really sort of grumble too much about it. But I just don't find it pleasing to watch. There were cynical fouls all over the place. They were stopping the game, and it took a lot for France. Obviously, France were underperforming as well. It took them a long time to get into it. But it did then explode into this absolute incredible final. Apart from, I would say, like maybe about 40 minutes to an hour. What do you make on Billy's comments about, first of all, being the best World Cup tournament and then the best final?
I think it's going to take a number of years for people to talk about it. From actually being there and walking around it, it was. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt so safe at a football ground. Just everyone, the mixture of all different shirts. I mean, the first game I saw in when I arrived in Qatar was Argentina v Australia. That was the first game I went to, and again because I went to in 2014, I went to the opening game, which was Argentina v Bosnia.
Yeah.
And this time I went to Argentina v Australia, and we sat in the middle of the Argentinians again. And it was normally if I was sitting in the middle of, if I was at a Manchester United game and I was sitting in the middle of opposing fans trying and watching the game, I'd be a little bit on edge. But I sat there, and the only thing I didn't do their funny hand movements and jumping up and down, because I don't think I'm going to convince anyone I'm Argentinian. But it was a fantastic experience being within those fans. Outside, the fans were walking past each other, they were chatting. And I think the big thing was, I have to say, there wasn't alcohol around the grounds, and I think it did make a difference. Yeah. I think what people do is the same as anything; they find a little bolt hole somewhere else. So what happened is that people were coming into the grounds late. Every time the media wanted to tell a story, look at the empty seats, but they never actually come out. And when the game had kicked off and said, "Cool, the stadium looks really full," because they couldn't say that because the whole agenda was saying, "Look, no one's watching." But what it was is that people were having a drink elsewhere, and then they was coming in later into the games. Same as for the second game, we was arriving 20 minutes, 30 minutes before kickoff. So that way, I would, on that side of it, that's one issue that it made things easier. People didn't feel that maybe weren't over the top. They knew they weren't going to, so they was just waiting and just enjoying the moment rather than rushing off and wanting to put more booze down their neck. Maybe people jumping around and weren't beer going everywhere. Maybe just bottles of water and the odd Coke stain everywhere. When I say Coke stain, I mean the drink, of course.
Yeah.
But, so I think on that side of it, it was a good talk. Everyone enjoyed it, and as the press has said, there wasn't one Englishman imprisoned or anything, arrested. So that side of it, I would say it's quite good. For me, the best ever tournament, 1982.
Yeah.
And that was on the football side of it. But then when we look at the best final, it's certainly a final that I will remember, just for the fact of Argentina were totally in control in the first half. The French were poor. And then Argentina. And when we talk about Argentina, when you talk about a mistake, there was only one player in that Argentina game, in that Argentina side, that was going to allow Argentina to cock up and make a mistake. And his name is Otamendi.
Yeah.
He was the only one from the moment I saw him playing that first game, my first game against Australia, and I saw him playing in a back four in a team that, is one of the favourites. I thought, how can this be with him in the back line? And throughout, he was terrible. The way he played, the opportunities gave people, the way he conducted himself against the Dutch, and he done exactly the same after the game yesterday as well. He's got no respect for anybody, and he should look at himself in the mirror and be telling himself how lucky he is. But when we talk about the first half and then what happened in the back end of the second half and the extra time, I mean, that is one that I think we will be talking about. It must be one of the best extra times I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And when you talk about getting into players' faces and the goalkeeper, Martinez, what he done, I think it would end up a brawl if that was a Premier League, if he was attempt to do anything like that.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt, if he had done that, doesn't matter how big he is or anything, you're not going to allow that. A referee, he wouldn't have tried to do that in the Premier League. He'd done that because he had all his teammates and that the Argentinian mentality come into Martinez. The Aston Villa one went to bed. The real Martinez, the boy from Argentina, come out in him for what happened in that penalty shootout, but it's got him a gold medal.
Yeah. I remember him at Old Trafford last season. After it was Fernandes in the last minute, he was doing similar stuff then, and he's so unlikable. Don't get me wrong, very effective. And I guess if he's playing for your team, you would enjoy someone being that provocative. I didn't enjoy it. I'm going to be honest. I thought you've got enough great storylines in this Argentina side. And I just thought that you mentioned a couple of episodes there, and I think they just sort of let it down a little bit. But like you said, and anyone who's studied anything to do with Argentina history, even going back to Maradona and everything like that, they win. They want to win in any way possible, and they're not going to apologize for the way in which they do it. I will say we've got that's a good summary there. Billy, I think everyone's going to be saying it's the best final ever, but there are a couple in there. He's definitely in that conversation for sure. AG Games Spoilers asks who was the best player in the World Cup in our opinions. Paul, I'll let you answer first. Unless you want me to go. Do you want me to go first?
I want you to go. I really need to think about this one.
Yeah. Okay. That is a tough one. I will say, I know that the narrative is about Messi and what he achieved, and I don't want to take anything away from that because he's a magnificent player, and it's good and fitting that he's got a World Cup because he was desperate for it, and it was a great moment to see one of the greatest ever win the accolade in the way that he wanted to do it. I will say, from the performance in the tournament, I don't think it was quite on the level of Maradona in '86. I think Maradona's imprints roll over those games, whereas Messi, he has had moments, don't get me wrong, and they have influenced games, but I think he was nowhere near as dominant as Maradona was in '86. And I understand, Maradona was a lot younger, he was close to his peak and everything like that. So that's possibly a reason why I'm just giving my explanation on that. And I don't think Messi was the best player at this World Cup. I do think, even though my opinion is that it's Mbappe, I still think that Mbappe was in moments as well. He was in moments yesterday. He didn't really come alive until 75 minutes. But then you look at it and you said, the game today, the sport today is about moments, really, because the games are played in slower patterns, and then they wait for someone to come alive and dictate the pace of the game. And that's what Mbappe did. He exploded in that sort of extra time and the period just before it. He was unplayable, and you see why in those situations. I remember, is it the last minute of extra time? He was running, taking on the defense with the energy of someone who was playing in the first minute. Do you know? And that's partly credit to Mbappe, but also partly an explanation of how slow the game is these days. That the player can afford to, they can conserve the energy and then burst in the last couple of minutes. You didn't see it back in, like they said, back in our day, back in the days, or even 20 years ago, players would be knackered at the end of extra time, making mistakes.
I allow you to say in our day, you can say that, Wayne, okay? Normally it's old fogies like me who say that, but I allow you that.
Yeah, so I still think Mbappe, because you look at what he did over the tournament. He was the most threatening player over the tournament. There were all those moments before the final where he was sensational. A couple of goals he scored were incredible. But then to do what he did in the final yesterday, I know people will talk about it being Messi's moment, and rightly so in a way, because he's got the trophy, he's got the medal. But I think that was Mbappe's day. That was the day in which he, like, players over generations have strived to do something like that, a statement performance in the biggest game in the world, and Mbappe absolutely dominated it in more than another, in a way that was more than any other player. And for that, I would have him as my player of the tournament. What do you think?
Well, lucky enough, you were talking and you definitely went into it. So that allowed me time to really think about it. And I would say my player is completely different. And you've kind of said it for me. The reason why is because you talked about football being in moments now, and I think you said there something that resonates with me so much. Is but I never come out with those words, and it is football. We're never going to see games controlled by individuals anymore, because the game's not allowed to go to carry on anymore. The game doesn't go in. The ball doesn't stay in play as long as it used to. The referees are giving away weak fouls. Players are throwing themselves to the floor. So, in theory, to stop teams and individuals getting hold of the game. So it's not the same anymore. But I saw something, and I use those words again, back in the day, an individual who I love watching him, because he was a focal point, a heartbeat of a team in all areas. And if he'd have played for a big team, a big nation, everyone would have been raving about him. They'd have been saying this about him. He would have had everything thrown at him if he'd have been playing for a big nation. This man played for a team that no one talked about before the World Cup, to be perfectly honest. There was just a country of people, everyone who wore funny hats. Amrabat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What a player. What a standout player. And he done it, excuse me now. Every game I watched Morocco play, he was no different. He didn't hide anywhere. He got on the ball. He ran forward of the ball. He won the ball back. He gave it to one of his players. And when he had to get out of trouble, had to beat people, he beat them. The challenge he made on Mbappe on the byline was incredible. Yeah. Now, when you're about going back in the day, that was an incredible. Mbappe wanted to roll around. He was desperate, but because the referee said, and in certain, there was some good. Hopefully, our referees take note of this as well. That referees in certain bits of it allowed games to go on. They made their own minds up. They didn't allow to be dictated to, or allow people in a room to make decisions for them. They just went, "That's not a foul," and they carried on. They played a hunch more than anything. It was a hunch, believing that the players faked it. And that Bappy one, he tried it, and you could see him looking up, and it carried on. And then 10 yards of limping, and back then he was on to his next sprint. Yeah. But he was fantastic from start to finish.
Yeah.
And for me, he was the player of the tournament. But because he's not a big nation, he doesn't get a mention. But when I look at people who, people who are footballers because they've worked, because there's something they've done all their life.
Yeah.
From the moment they were kids, they were street players. They were everything about them. They've done, they just wanted to be a footballer, and that's what he was. And that's why I'm a lover of Messi before Ronaldo, because Messi was a street footballer who
Yeah.
played it in the streets. For me, I'd say Ronaldo become a good player. That's what he did. He became a very, very good player. Messi was always a good player, and the reason why he's still so good now because he's still playing from what he learned from when he was a kid on the streets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the people are going to say that debate's over. People are going to say it's just going to continue going on. It's obviously going to continue because people who have got strong opinions on either side.
Mm.
It'd be idiotic to say it's over. It's going to continue. But Messi's definitely strengthened his case for that argument. We got a few more questions in. Billy, he says, I thought Christian Romero set a tone elbow in his own teammate at Spurs, Lloris, earlier on. Argentina would have done anything to win that game yet. And Mike, good morning, Mike. Hope you're doing well. He asks us a question which is on that similar point, really. As a professional footballer, Paul, is it win at all costs, or is there something to be said for winning the right way?
I believe in I believe in winning the right way. I think there's a little bit in win at all costs. It's important because it's the thing you live and die really is winning games. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't be most would be talking to I'm talking to you, Wayne, and people most wouldn't be listening if I had been Paul Parker who played in a failed Manchester United team who won nothing, achieved nothing. It's as simple as that. So winning is important at all costs. I think we have to say there's variations there, but there's still the right way. Sir Alex Ferguson had his way, which I believe, and which I still always stand with when I get in kind of heated debates with people, the right way and the wrong way, and his way was the right way in winning games of football. So I would say there is, and that's with respect as well. That as much as people hate you, they love you for the way you've gone and done it, for the football you played and the manner you've gone and done it. And it's still about when you win, you don't have to poke fun at your opponents.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you bear a grudge, someone's done something. The best way to deal with it is to smile, shake hands, and then maybe when you turn away, you get in the dressing room, you find somewhere, walking maybe into a cubicle, and you have the biggest smile, the biggest laugh after, but you don't have to push things in people's faces. Because the one thing about football, unless you're going to retire the next day, there's always another game.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in today's life, given social media, it's amazing how people can flip things around and show things to you from year before, 2 years before, 10 years before. Always got to be wary of that. So the likes of Otamendi has got to remember that.
Yeah. I remember Otamendi getting turned by Rashford on Rashford's first derby. He's not really been a convincing defender, but he's a World Cup winner, so what do I know? So one last question before we move on to United-related World Cup content. Billy asks your thoughts on Southgate staying on as manager. Can't argue he's done a great job, but does he hold the team back with his sometimes negative tactics in the big games? And I guess that's the talking point, isn't it, Paul? I mean, obviously England did well. France were a better side. You can't disagree with that. And even then, England put up a really strong performance in that game. And it did seem to come down to that sort of 60 to 70 minute mark where you just thought he could make a change here. Maybe Rashford, maybe another player, but he could make a change, and he just hesitated. He didn't make the right kind of, his mount, which didn't seem like a really convincing. What do you make on Billy's question?
Right, the first part of it is that I'm pleased that he's staying, because if he was to say he was going, I would say who's going to be the manager next? I don't want a foreign manager. I want an English manager to be English, an England manager to be English. You're third world if you have a foreign manager. The great nations do not have foreign managers. It's as simple as that. So I don't know all these people calling for it. It doesn't make any sense to me. When you talk about, I think he's done no one's done a better job than him, except really in theory, Sir Alf Ramsey.
Yeah,
he's been to two semi-finals. Sorry, he's been to two semis. He's been to a final, and now he's been to a quarter-final. So when you look at what he's done in his last three tournaments. He hasn't done too bad, is he? Really better than everybody, really, except for that one man, Sir Matt Busby. But when
Ramsey.
so what did I say?
Ramsey. You said Busby. That's all
Oh,
right.
did I? That's all right. That's all right. You're lucky enough, yeah. So when people talk about his tactics, we've got to be careful we should be careful because we're all individuals. Other people have got their job, and no one would like someone to be telling them that they're doing their jobs wrong, and they know it better than you. When you've done it all your life, you sat down, you've done the hours on the training ground, on the training field. You've been logging everything. You've been doing it all, and then you got to make judgment calls, quick judgment calls, split second ones. I think the Deschamps decision just before half time. There'll be a few managers doing that now.
Yeah.
You're making changes like that, and to be honest, you've got so many subs now. Why can't you? You can't worry because a player's going to, throw his dummy out because he's going to be taken off before half time. It's not a nice feeling to be taken off. Then you feel you've been blamed for things, but it's called tactics, and I think a lot of managers are scared with certain players to make those decisions. To take off Giroud was a big decision by Deschamps, but we look at where France got to in the end. It was the right decision in the end because it kept him in it. It kept him in the game longer. But I look at Southgate, and everyone wants to question. He's not really holding the players back. It's the players who do it themselves because there's only a certain amount the manager can do. If he says, "I want you to keep running forward," when all of a sudden that player keeps running forward, and the man's going the other way, his man who he's up against is not going with him, but he's causing problems. My midfield player is going to go, "You've got to track back. I need help here. I can't do it on my own." So that's what happens. Players will work their own things out. Players don't always do what managers tell them. It's a fact of life. So you can't always keep blaming him for that. I think he's got to do now is that he's got to get Phil Foden on the park, and he's got to virtually turn around, as the boss said to all of us when Eric played, is that when Eric wants the ball, you give it to him. He virtually said, "Eric's our best player. He's the best passer. He can find the player. He can score great goals. Just give him the ball." And that's the way you've got to work with Foden. We don't do that as England players. The players will not give it to him. They will not give it to him because I think a lot of them play for themselves. They're worried about their stats. They're worried about if they give the ball to Phil in a tight area, he might lose it. It might affect their stats. There's issues still going on, I think, there in the way that England play. But, if you've got someone like Phil Foden, you see that he plays regular in the best side in the country, the best manager maybe in world football, plays him in the big games. He plays in tight areas. He's maybe the only England player, who can actually get in a 20, who would have fitted in quite nicely in the Barcelona 2011 team. The way he plays, when he's on the ball, he moves it quickly. He takes it off its line. He runs 2-3 yards to create space, to take people away who are trying to man mark him. He runs without the ball. So Gareth Southgate has really got to look at what he's got, make his mind up on his best 11, and be like Bobby Robson and stick with them and believe in them and not worry about what the press want to tell him, because all these people who sit in the press, the journalists, there's a lot of them out there. There's the experienced ones who know it, who went through the Bobby Robson era. Some of them I remember. And there's the slightly younger ones, the ones I remember from Manchester United who are still around, and them ones, they're the ones who understand. But the biggest problems are the ones who use laptops. They don't talk to players anymore, not because the players generally don't want to talk to them. They don't want to talk to players because they don't want to create familiarity, because they think that might affect them. At the end of the day, you can be black and white. People understand you're doing your job. If someone's made a mistake, you've got to be able to tell them. If you have a friend and you can't tell a friend that there's a problem, then really, in theory, that's not your friend. And that's how it works for me with journalists in that way. So Gareth Southgate should have the job, because what's in black and white about his career so far, it'd be mad to get rid of him. I think it'd be foolish to walk away from what he's done. He's got 2 years left in his contract. He should, he'd be making up his mind now. He might have said already, this is my final 2 years, and he should try and finish on a high. And if that means
Yeah.
going to the Euros in Germany and getting to a semi-final, then hopefully getting to a final, then that should be his aim. Because I think he has to look at being in a semi-final. England have to beat a top team. Have to beat a top team. We don't beat them when it matters, but that's not always down to him. I say you've got to there's more emphasis on the players in those games because it's about the players who have got to have it on the park. The manager can tell them to be strong, to be brave, to be positive, get on the ball, do this. But if the player gets out there, then all of a sudden something goes in their heads, and then all of a sudden it affects their heart. Then worst of all, they suddenly feel a little bit like they want to be physically sick. They haven't got it. He can't do anything about that. So we've got to get out of this world we're in at the moment in this country of calling Gareth Southgate, saying that what they say oh, he hasn't got a plan B. He's got to take the handbrake off. They're blaming him when he's not one of the 11 on the park. It's about the players he puts out there, and we keep hearing about these players are good enough. Now look what they do in the Premier League. We have to remember in the Premier League, and I know I'm going on a bit, but they play with seriously good foreign players, overseas players who are incredibly good, and those players amalgamate into them, and they become good players with them. So we have to say is that we can't judge the players off of what they do for their clubs as much. We can go over a little bit, but they're not going to be the same players. John Barnes, maybe one of England's greatest ever players. We'll talk about him in that vein, but he took a lot of stick when he played. Him and Chris Waddle got slaughtered playing for their country. Yeah. But you have to remember, more so with John Barnes. John Barnes was playing in an incredible Liverpool team at that given time. And then he was coming to play in an England team with players, maybe one of them, who weren't maybe up to the standards that he was used to playing with at Liverpool. And everyone took it out on him and blamed him and said he was rubbish for his country. It's about the players who are around you. They're the ones who make it. No player is good on his own. Messi can't win a game of football on his own. He'll have his moments and he'll dribble around 5 players, but there'll be another 5 outfield players ready to take the ball off him after he beats that first 5. You can't win a game on your own. It's about a team. England have to become a team first. Argentina won a World Cup because they are a team with an incredible individual who can make opportunities. Yeah. If we become a team, we can achieve something because we've got 1 or 2 good individuals.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Foden, and I completely agree, even though he plays for City. The other one I do want to give a special mention to before we move on is Bellingham, because I thought he was outstanding. He's 19, so if he's he was so good against France. I mean, you've seen England players sort of drop the shoulders against teams they never set back, but Bellingham dragged England into that game, made it competitive. So if you've got a player like Bellingham who does play with the kind of attributes in which you've just described, and he's only going to benefit from that experience. If you've got a magician like Foden, then it's a really good basis to build around for 2024 for sure. I do want to ask very quickly about, because I'm going to be asking you a 4-pronged question here. So as quickly as you can to summarise how you think you were a defender who really excelled in a World Cup. How do you think each of the United defenders played during the tournament? And that would be, I guess we'll go through Maguire, Shaw, Varane, and Martinez. Dalot, I think, was a bit mixed, but if we go with those 4, the main ones, Maguire and Shaw for England, first of all, how do you think they did?
I thought Luke Shaw done well. I can't really be critical of Luke Shaw, to be perfectly honest. I think he was steady, not outstanding, but he was steady. Over those games, you have to say he was steady. There wasn't any issues. I think that so Luke Shaw, for me, done himself justice, coming off the back of a difficult first half of the season. It was a difficult start for him because he wasn't playing, and he's fought through that. He earned the right he'd come back into the team, earned the right to stay in the team, and carried on doing what he was doing. He's never going to be outstanding because he doesn't suit the narrative of today's fullbacks. His body shape, what people are looking for. He's not agile. but he is a straightforward, straight line runner up and down. So he's done a good job. Harry Maguire, we have to say he was Harry Maguire, really. I think there was friends in the press who were trying to help him out in certain bits, but did he do enough there to prove to Ten Hag that he should be playing for Manchester United? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Ponderous on the ball. I watch centre halves of other teams, other nations. He's the slowest one with the ball at his feet. Never doesn't shift the ball quick enough. Takes too long on it. Too quick to blame other people. Anything that goes wrong around him, he wants to. He's a modern day Tony Adams with his arms in the air at the assistant referee all the time. Got caught out for 2 goals in the tournament. We have to say. I think in the first, the goal against the cross the line, was it? It was the first game was Iran. Then it was the USA, wasn't it? The USA game. He got caught out, and then
we drew 0-0 against USA.
Was it USA?
I think it was Iran.
Iran, yeah. I think it was Iran game. Then it must have been the second goal. It must have been. I think their second goal when it got across him, and for the Giroud goal as well. He got caught out, and then he caught out. Giroud has lumbered in front of him far too easily. Varane, I really don't know with Varane. Varane playing with Martinez, I should say. Those two look very good together, complemented each other. Varane was being led by Martinez, so he looked all right for United. In the front, he looked very tentative when he's playing. I never realised as well, he's got very unsteady legs. He hasn't got the strongest legs in the world. When you look at him, you just go, wow. That's not legs I was expecting with a footballer, to be perfectly honest. So, but France got to a semi-final. He's a World Cup winner already. Sorry, he's got to a final. He's got to 2 finals now. Sorry, won one, lost one. It's not a bad return. Martinez deserves to be playing. To be perfectly honest, I don't understand why he wasn't playing. I saw him come on a sub against Australia. Within 2 seconds, he makes a great tackle on the far side to where I was on the byline. Makes a great block on the lad. Australian lad made a run with the ball, a dribble into the box. He makes a tackle 8 yards from the angle of the box. He doesn't make that tackle. They go and get themselves back into the game. He done that running from the left across to the right. Yeah. His great strength is that he senses danger, and you can't coach that. He sees danger, or he's a control freak. One of the two. But whatever he does, he does it really well. He was brilliant. I thought he was brilliant when he got his chances. And for him not to have played in that final, I still don't understand why he wasn't playing, especially when they didn't have a natural left-sided defender there as well. I saw him. He beat Van Dijk in the air. He done Van Dijk in the air on the edge of his own box in the game against Holland. So Martinez done for me, done really, really well. So they should come back. I think the first game we should see Varane. So that Varane come off, didn't he? But we don't know really how serious it was. We saw him at Old Trafford crying his eyes out. I thought the World Cup was over. I mean, I was surprised when I saw he was in the squad, and I didn't look at the French squad really because no one talks about him. I just assumed he weren't fit. So I'll expect to see him on Boxing Day playing for United. So I expect to see him and Martinez playing as centre-halves for Manchester United.
Yeah, well, they definitely enhanced their reputation as a starting pair by getting to the final for sure. It's a good thing for United that both of their centre-halves are World Cup winners. So moving on then, obviously the timing of the World Cup has been a big thing. Big sort of domestic football. It was a bad time for United, for this break to come because they'd had a little bit of a stumbling form. The Ronaldo thing was going on, and then they won in the League Cup. They won against Fulham in the last minute. You've got that momentum. You kind of want it to keep pushing on. The players have obviously been playing in the meantime, but normally in an international tournament, Paul, you have the tournament, you have a couple of weeks holiday, then you're back in pre-season training. and then you've got like a month of pre-season training, bonding to get back together, and then even then, people aren't expecting you to be on your A game from. It's a different thing with United. People do expect that every single game, but you still have pre-season rust. They say, "Oh, it'll take a few games to get up to speed." I know that every club's going to be in that same boat at the moment, but do you think it's going to take a little bit of time for these players to be? Cause it's not just a physical thing; it's an emotional thing. A lot for the players who got to the final, like Varane, he got to the final and lost. Martinez got to the final and won. What's their mentality going to be like? They're going to be back in a team in 8 days' time, expected to win every single game of football. Do you think it's going to be a bit weird to look at the effects of the World Cup and see how it lands on these players?
I think it's not going to be that bad coming straight into it, Wayne. Really, rather than I remember myself coming back, and I come back and I didn't go straight back into it. I had torn so I had a double hernia operation when I come back. No, so I had a double hernia. No, I had one when I come back. So then it took me a while to get into it. I think when I come back, my first game was against Manchester United at Old Trafford. I remember I was wearing like skin diver kind of shorts underneath my normal shorts. So for me to come back, but I just remember it, and it was great going back. And all you want to do is just get on and just play football. And I was hindered, so I just wanted to play.
Yeah.
I think Martinez will come back, and he's going to want to play. He's going to be on a massive high. And to be honest, and I think everyone knows what he's like. He'll just get out there and he'll carry on as normal. There won't be a change. And he's one of those players, and having a World Cup winners medal will not affect him in the slightest, because he wants more. He wants club medals for Manchester United, and I don't think he'll allow anything to stand in his way, and he won't allow a teammate to hinder that opportunity either. We have to say with Varane, he's been there as winning one. He's lost one now, but he's been to a final. No one can take away everything that he's done in his career already. So he should be mature enough to carry on and get on with it. The thing about it though is I just think the media, the press will push to try and push that narrative when a player is struggling. The player's having a bad game. From being tired when they're having a bad game, they're going to say, "Oh, he's got trauma from the World Cup. He's emotionally tired from the World Cup." He'd find things where normally you just go out and say the person's human. He's having a bad game. That can happen. It happened from day dot of football, that someone has a bad game. He's human. He's had a bad game. Someone has a good game. He's human. There's never nothing wrong with anybody when he's had a good game. But inside, you don't know if that person's tired. But they'll never say that because he's had a good game. So I don't think they'll be going straight back into it. Isn't a bad thing, in my opinion. Sometimes, rather than if you've got 2 weeks after, that means 2 weeks to party. 2 weeks where everyone's slapping your back. Let's do this, let's do that, grabbing it. He's got to come back into it. Everyone knows he's coming straight back into work. Woof, take a step back. We can't do anything at this moment. We have to wait until May before we can actually progress and go and do anything else. So I think it will just stop, the treasure hunters from grabbing onto things, because players have to go straight back into work. And if the clubs are strong, they will get hold of the players and say, this is your bread and butter, this is important, and not allow the players to try and get involved in all this kind of stuff that generally bounces back off of a World Cup.
What about the fact that it's at Christmas time? I mean, obviously the routine is different every single year. Christmas is like a unique thing to British football. To come back in, there's Christmas, there's Boxing Day, and actually it is quite a packed period of time. There's at least 3 games from Boxing Day Boxing Day, then the 30th or 31st, and then the 3rd of January. So I know it's not like a massive back-breaking exercise for the players, but it is still nonetheless a packed schedule at Christmas time, when the idea would be, you can let yourself not let yourself go on Christmas Day. You certainly can't do that because you're a professional. But Christmas Day is a different emotional experience. You're with your family. You might go in and train as well, but it's still a unique thing in British football. So you've got not just coming back from the World Cup, you've got Christmas as well. Do you think that might compound it, or do you think the fact that there's a bunch of games coming up that might actually help the togetherness of the squad?
I think, I mean, there was an old saying, but it seems like they're trying to, discard it now. Is that you'd rather play games than train?
Yeah,
and players want to play game. You want everything that goes with it. You want to play over Christmas because you know that everyone's watching. Everyone's watching his games. It was always a really good time to play football. The bonus is now is that it's not a squad of 16 players now, is it? It's like it's over 25 players, and you're in the Premier League, so you can get 20. You can have a squad of 25 decent players. So you got to utilize that squad. Every manager comes on, he says, "Oh, when they win a game of football, your team played great today." No, my squad did it. It's all about the squad. But when they get a couple of injuries, or when we had our pandemic, the squad wasn't. No, we can't play. So they've got to make their mind up. They've either got a good squad, or they're just getting players for the sake of it. So you utilise your squad. So simply, lucky, the Premier League stopped playing, the Championship stopped playing, but had to come back earlier. The other sides, the other sides in the first, second division, national, have had to keep playing. They're going to have to keep playing games over that same period, so they're no different to anyone else. So we're highlighting players more so because they're earning a load of money.
Yeah.
Rather than the ones who are having to play because they really need to earn the money. So we have to stop this kind of pampering these players when in theory they're doing something that they love and they should be going through brick walls to play in every single game. Because when at the end of the season, at the end of your career, you want to have played as many games as possible, as many games as can. And I look at me, I never played enough games. I wish I'd have played more games, and that's what they should be aiming for. But we shouldn't take it away from them. I keep talking about how tired they are and you're playing too many games. And is it right that you should come back from World Cup and should you have 5 weeks off to rest? No, it's your job. It's something you're doing what you love, and you're not going out every single day from morning till night. So, I'm one of the, I live in the old world of it, of what football should be rather than, and what it is now.
Yeah. We're not going to preview the games. I'm going to run because we've got a lot of questions in here that I'm just going to come to before, and we don't really know the composition of the team or anything like that. What players are back in training and who's going to be playing in the League Cup game or thing. I don't think we'll be doing a pod next week, so it'll be Boxing Day, so it'll be the week after that. Probably we'll come back and review those games. I do want to. There's two questions I'm not going to ignore. I'm going to put them on, and maybe we'll come to them the next time we do a pod. But I don't think there's enough time to really go into them or do the answers justice. So Billy has asked our thoughts on Sancho right now. Seems to be something both physically and mentally holding him back at the moment. I'm just I've put it up there because I don't want to say that we're ignoring it, but I'm not going to speculate at this moment in time. He was on his own individual training routine. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time, if he's not played, we'll come back and discuss that. And another question here about opinion on Malacia, the World Cup not doing anything. We'll discuss that next time as well, because I think that will be we'll see an effect either way if Malacia plays or doesn't, and I think it'll give us better education to answer that. But a couple that I do want to come to just before we leave the podcast for this week. Nikos asks, he says, "Morning lads, do we need to sign a replacement striker in January to finish in the top four?" This is the age-old question, Paul. Is Martial enough? He was back. He's been playing the friendlies. Is it enough that Martial's there? Do United need to go into the transfer market? I mean, everyone knows the financial situation. There's not a lot of cash there, so it'd be probably a loan or a short-term kind of signing in the sort of vein of Igalo, and you don't really know how many of those kind of strikers are available. Can United get through the rest of the season, finishing in the top four with the strike force that they've got, or do they need to get another one in?
They need to get another one in because they're easy to defend against. Simple as that. Teams will know that Martial's never going to run behind. He's not that kind. He doesn't play. He's not a centre forward. But he won't use what he has got, his good pace, to look to run without the ball in behind. So teams will squeeze higher. That means they can close down quicker as well in midfield. So they need someone now, even if it's somewhat a youngster who's learning. They need someone who can just play that role, who they can bounce off when they're attacking. Someone who's technically very good, who wants to drop in, can even spin and go behind to keep defenders, centre halves on their toes. So is Martial the should he be the only option? No, he shouldn't, because you can't rely on him. You don't know when he's going to get injured next, or he's not in the mood for it. So common sense says that Manchester United have to sign a striker.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Also, I mean, if Garnacho continues with his emergence, you might see Rashford played through the middle. And I'm not saying he's ever convinced fully as a natural striker, but there was a suggestion that he's benefiting from the training with Benny McCarthy. You've seen him a little bit more physical in the air in the last couple of games. So maybe we'll see how that happens. Patrick says good morning. Morning, Patrick. Hope you're doing well. Just this last question to close on, really, Paul. He says, observing Ten Hag since he took up the reins, but I guess we'll especially focus on the World Cup. Even during the World Cup break, he really seems to exude decisiveness, e.g. the handling of Ronaldo, Maguire, his response in public to the club sale. He seems clear on what he wants. He wants to win and win in a certain manner. I think we'll see the tangible fruits next season, which is, obviously a great summary. I mean, in terms of the fact that United haven't played, the way that Ten Hag has been able to conduct himself, even the friendlies weren't great, don't get me wrong. At least the players got minutes. But in terms of the public actions that he's come out and spoke about, he handled the Ronaldo thing with swift clarity and for the good of the club, and he's put him in a stronger position. And the way that he's talked about the ownership structure at the moment and the potential implications moving forward, he's handled himself really well. When, previous managers, I remember, you look at David Moyes saying that we hope to make it difficult for Newcastle to come to United. What I'm trying to say is he seems to be handling the public spotlight of United very well. And these are two very high-profile things that he's had to deal with, even with the fact that United haven't played any games. So even though he hasn't had anything to do with the World Cup, it's been a fairly good World Cup for Ten Hag, hasn't it?
Yeah, in that sense, the way he's come across, you have to say as well, remember that he's managed a big club before, isn't he?
Yeah, of course.
When we talk about Ajax, the biggest club in Dutch football, when you talk about in Europe, what they are in European football and what they're known in world football as well. So he's been, at the helm of a top club. So he understands, what to say, what not to say, and how to deal with it, certain individuals, be it that we're talking a different level to Manchester United, but, everyone knows Ajax and that, that football club, everyone's fully aware of what goes with it. So I look at the situation now, and what is the biggest concern for me is what happens when it got mentioned in there about next season. Is he going to be able to go and do similar shopping to what he done, this season?
Yeah.
If he can do that, then things are step forwards. But as we're seeing before, after that first season, the next time around, that's where difficulties have started. So I'm hoping, he's the first one to come in and be in the position he's in. The way he's talked, he's just said the right things. And he means it as well. He's dealt with the players well. He's allowed no one to walk all over him. He's made strong decisions. So I'm quite looking forward to this second half of the season, to be perfectly honest, to see what difference it makes not to have Ronaldo in the dressing room, how the players deal with that, what happens there. I'm looking to see what he can do regarding the situation of a centre forward. Everyone wants a centre forward, Everyone wants one. Every day, 365 days a year, every manager wants a centre forward. It's as simple as that. So when you've only got a summer and a January to buy one, to get one in, you don't know, do you? At the moment, it's not about Manchester United going out and looking for a 15 goal a season centre forward. They need someone who can be a centre forward who you can nurture, someone you can coach into becoming one. Because when they turn up, you never know, and all of a sudden, bang, they become goal scorers. You can't just go out and be in January and go and bring in a 15 to 30 goal season goals centre forward. It doesn't work that way. But it's easy to go and find a player and bring them in. All of a sudden, you find that this person is made for Manchester United in the way they play. There's something about them, and all of a sudden they become something, and it goes on. Eric comes to mind.
Yeah.
Everyone at first called Sir Alex. Why'd you go and get him for? He's wrong. He's not right and heady. Look what happened in France. He's fallen out with Howard Wilkinson. He's a problem. Don't bring him. And some people are made to play for certain clubs, and it's about finding that. It's about finding that player. Now, if he can go and do that, then he's starting a lot earlier than what Sir Alex did. If he can go and find that player or find those players, because Sir Alex found more than one. So I'm quite looking forward to it, I must say. Looking forward, just to the fact of there's been this kind of gap in between the Premier League. Lucky enough, there was football in between it to watch as well. Now I'm looking for the next stage of it and waiting for the gossip to start now between now and Boxing Day about who's going to win the Premier League. Are Arsenal going to keep their 5 points at the top? Are they going to be able to hold in there? And if Manchester United are going to be able to guarantee a Champions League spot by late March.
Yeah. Patrick says, spot on. We need to find a raw diamond of striking option for the second half. And yeah, Paul, you said it perfectly. It's about judgment of a player that might not seem obvious at first. Another comment in saying this has been a great stream. Thanks for this. No problem. We're here most Mondays, obviously not next Monday because it's Boxing Day, but the one after I'll try and pull Paul out of a post New Year slumber, which I'm sure I'll be in more than what Paul is for sure. But yeah, I think that's a great point that you made about the striker. And I mean, if anyone has earned the right to say his judgment has been pretty good so far, it's been Ten Hag. So if he finds one, then I'm pretty sure that we'll get it right. Nico says, thanks, Paul, Wayne and Paul. Great show. Merry Christmas to all. Yeah, Merry Christmas to everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the podcast through the years. Really appreciate it. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, please feel free to subscribe and like the channel and everything like that. And if you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe and give us a review on the platform that you're listening on. We will be back in a couple of weeks. I think that will be the new year by that point. So until then, Merry Christmas. Have a great new year. And we will see you then to talk about United's form in the meantime.